Alright, so a little intro about me. I'm a mid diamond player with about 120 hours on Rivals. I also played about 1,000 hours on Overwatch 2. So I kind of understand what I'm talking about. And feel free to tell me in the comments if or how I can make better videos because I really enjoy the constructive criticism. So first off, I'm going to be talking about very basic stuff like role jobs, space, the very basics of like space, because space can be very complex, but the very basics of space, role jobs, and cooldown usage. It will make sense and it'll be basic stuff for you. Sorry. But if you have no idea what I just said, you're in the right spot. This is a perfect place for you. So, I'm going to explain it at a very base level, like I already said. Alright, so let's get into it. We're going to talk about space first. So, space is sort of like the building block of kind of like everything in this game. Think of it as like you're pushing the like enemy team for an advantage, right? And you try to capitalize off that advantage. Like your DPS get a pick or something as an advantage. Like an example for an advantage is like your DPS get a pick, or you have like a support ultimate up, like Luna ult or Cloak and Dagger or Mantis or something. That's like an advantage where you could like full push and be like, okay, we got an advantage here. Let's try to capitalize off this. Now it's very nuanced because things could change like literally in a blink of an eye. So that'll come in time, like you'll learn that. But like I said, this is just base level. So try to understand when you're in the enemy's space and when you're in your team's space. Don't push too far out into the enemy's space or you will literally just explode. Like if you have ever just ran into the enemy team and like, oh, where's my healers? Listen, man. You're not out healing 6 people shooting you in the face, okay? It's just not happening. Anyways, so this is like a game of inches, you know what I mean? As like I've kind of tried to explain so far. You push, they fall back, or if they push, you fall back. It's kind of like you need a kite. And here, I'll explain some of the lingo that I'm talking about as well. Kite means like, let's say they have a support ult up, like Luna ult. Your team will kind of just try to stay out of that and take as little damage from that as possible so you can flip around and turn it on them. So that's what kite means. And so I'll explain, that's kind of like the basics of space, sort of. It's like a push and pull. Try not to go too far out of your space, but also like try to make space depending on your role. So now we're going to kind of get into role jobs. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the different role jobs. Tank and DPS, I definitely understand a lot more. So that'll make more sense, but I do still understand a little bit about support. So it's tank or Vanguard. I say tank because I come from Overwatch, but it's Vanguard in Marvel Rivals. So the tank's job is not only to hold the front, unless we're talking about like Venom or someone similar. They basically do the same thing, just a little different. But the tank kind of just holds the front. And, he's the one who kind of controls the flow of the game, the tank. In a lot of ways, they control the flow. And they try to push into the enemy space, but also make more space for their team. And the tank role kind of needs to understand space like a lot. It's a very important thing when we're talking about tank, or Vanguard. I'm gonna refer to them as like tank, and then I'm gonna refer to DPS as the duelist as DPS, and the strategist as support. Like I said, I come from Overwatch, so like I said, the tank's job, unless you're playing like a dive tank like Venom, kind of Cap, kind of Thor. Thor's more of a brawl. I wouldn't say Thor. More like Cap and Venom. They do more of like a go in, draw out resources, and get out. That's their kind of role. So that's kind of like the tank role, sort of summed up. And then the DPS slash the duelist. DPS is very important. DPS is you have to learn how to play in your space, but also not like behind your team all the time. You need to kind of learn to like make an off angle and apply pressure from a different spot. That's what an off angle is, different spot of pressure. Because then you're like, so it makes it hard. Think about it this way: you are the enemy team, and you're pushing onto a point, and the tank's running at you, and the tank has like a DPS or something behind them. But then in like the top left, they have like a Moon Knight poking out your back line, and it just makes it a lot harder to deal with that tank and the Moon Knight at the same time. That's important. You need to apply pressure, and you need to know when to apply that pressure. You can't just start like if your team is not in the front, then it's like, okay, well, I could maybe poke a little bit here. Poke means just like do a little bit of trickle damage, maybe force out some cooldowns, and live. Living is the important part. But so you want to poke a little bit, maybe draw out some cooldowns, but when your team gets there, that's when you want to like full on go for someone. And if you can get a pick when you're poking, that's totally good too. Like I said, this is nuanced, things change, but it's kind of like a baseline. So strategist slash support. Support, they have a very significant job. They play kind of in the back in the space that they already have. They're not really space creators. They're more like space maintainers, if that makes sense. You kind of just need to be aware of your team and understand what your tank is doing, or what your DPS is doing, or what your other support is doing. Now, I think that supports their most important, like number one job is to make sure that their other support stays alive. Because if your other support falls over, your job gets a lot harder. Hopefully you're not solo, supporting or strategist. Hopefully you're not a solo, but sometimes that happens. Hopefully you have some flexible people that can help you out. But I mean, that's kind of like a baseline of all the roles. I'll kind of go over them a little bit more, but I want to get like a baseline of everything kind of first. So cooldown usage. So like your cooldowns. Now there's a lot to talk about here at like a high level, but at a base level, not really. It's kind of more like just use your buttons, like your shift, your E, or whatever controller you're on, console, whatever, your X, your B, whatever, triangle, square. Just have a purpose for using them. Do not just press them to just press them, because these are very crucial to winning you a fight and to winning you a game. You want to just make sure that you're using them for a reason, and you are not just pressing your buttons to press your buttons. That's like number one, super important. So that's kind of like a base of everything. And I mean, like I said, tank, they are space creators and space holders. Tank's role in, holding space is very important. They can, especially in this game, tanks can really do a lot of damage too. So you do not want to underestimate tanks' damage. But you need to understand that, like, you need to make sure that you also play an LOS of your supports. Now, what LOS is line of sight. So, like, if I'm looking out and I don't see my, let's say I'm a tank, right? I'm playing Guru, whatever. Say I run out and I jump into the enemy team and I just fall over. That's my fault. 9 times out of 10, if you run into the enemy team, that is your fault. And you just fall over, that is your fault. You need to turn around. This is what I do, is I'll turn around and kind of look and see where my team is playing, and that's where I'll try to play. So that's what you need to do. You need to kind of learn where to play so that your team can help you. It's like a help me help you kind of situation. And the same thing with DPS. That's the same thing. You can't just spam I need healing, even though I do that a lot. But you need to understand when you're like in your support's line of sight and when you're not. That's important. And as you can see in this gameplay here, I'm cutting people's line of sight off with my Groot walls. You need to, like, it's just important to do that. That's important. Like, the line of sight is very important as well. So you'll learn. It just takes time. And the number one piece of advice I can give you in this game is just don't get upset. Don't tilt queue. Don't get super mad at your team. Nobody performs better when you start screaming at them. Just do not scream at people. Do not curse people out. It's not helping the team at all. And really, you're the problem if you're doing that all your games. Okay, you're the problem. So, and number one thing is, like, it just takes time. You're not going to learn all this stuff immediately. I have a lot of hours on Overwatch, and I already have, 150 to 120 hours on this game. And there's still stuff I need to learn. You know what I mean? I'm only like mid-diamond. I'm almost GM. I've almost hit GM a couple times, but it's like, it just takes time. And if you're really just stuck, just like go back and watch your VOD. VOD is like just the game that you just played. This game has a good replay system. And just kind of like what I said in this video, look for that. If you did or if you didn't do it, just kind of look for it and try to understand, oh man, I didn't do this, didn't do that. And there's a bunch of resources out there that'll help you improve. There's resources, better people than me that explain things in an easier way to understand. I'm not the greatest at explaining things. I'm new to this, but I do want to help. So kind of take what I learned, take what I said, and kind of try to learn from it. Like I said, space is important. Cooldown usage is important. The different role jobs. It's just, this isn't one of those games you can just jump in and start dominating unless you understand some nuanced things. At the end of the day, this game is more about resource management. It's a lot more like, oh, I'm going to go here and force out these cooldowns, and then I'm going to press my ult. You know what I mean? So it's like you need to understand when and when to not do that. But you'll learn. I mean, it's just it's a good game too. It's fun, and that's the number one thing. Just have fun. You know what I mean? If you're not having a good time, if you don't feel like playing ranked, if you don't feel like queuing, don't queue. Don't queue, because it's just going to make you go down more and you're not going to feel great. Just have a good time. Number one thing is this is a video game at the end of the day. Just have a good time. And I hope this video helped you guys out. And if it did, please subscribe. And like I said, let me know in the comments if there's any constructive criticism, if there's anything that you think I could have said or done better about this video. But I appreciate you guys sticking around, and have a good rest of your day.